Hello, welcome to this session of Win-Loss Week. My name is Jonathan Stevens, and I'm a win-loss consultant at Clozd. I'm very excited to introduce Sanjay Puri, who just may be the best product marketer in the world, or at least one of the best we've definitely worked with. Sanjay has been with us a long time, and it's been great to work with Sanjay. Sanjay's official title is VP of Product Marketing at Avalara. He's been in that capacity for the time that we've been working with him. He's about to transition to a different role at Avalara, but you know, for the purposes of this interview, everything that he's done is in the context of his VP of Product Marketing role. So that's the two of us. What I'm going to talk through and what Sanjay and I are going to talk about today is just some of the main takeaways or learnings that Avalara has gleaned from running an effective win-loss program. They've been doing it for a number of years now, and so I think there's some really interesting things we're going to learn from Sanjay. And I just want to say thanks for joining us, Sanjay. This is definitely a pleasure.
Absolutely, excited to be here. Thanks.
So to start off, Sanjay, can you just give a little background on what originally made you start thinking about doing a win-loss program?
Yeah, so when I joined the company, Avalara, back in 2017, one of the first things on my mind was to really start to get some feedback from real customers and real prospects. One of the things that I did was I opened up our instance of Salesforce.com, picked up some customer contacts and started calling them, and actually leverage some of the advice that I found on one of Clozd's early blogs on how to talk to customers. Talk to 20, 25 customers on my own. But as I started talking to customers, I felt like I also need to talk to people who we did not win over. And that's what brought along this idea of approaching Clozd and a couple of other vendors. And after having talked to the co-founders at Clozd and other folks, we decided to work with Clozd.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So tell me more about that. I mean, you'd been doing it a little bit by yourself. So aside from the blog post, what made you think? What kind of tipped the scales to make you say, let's use a third party versus let's continue to do it ourselves?
Yeah. When I joined the company, I was a one-man army. Well, I think I had one other person reporting to me. We have a much larger team now, fortunately. But while it was great for me to absorb everything that I was hearing from customers and prospects, what I was missing out on was the ability to be able to document all of the learnings I was getting in a way that was easily shareable. Honestly, I was doing it for myself. I actually built a spreadsheet, and I had, after conducting about 5 to 7 interviews, I knew the kinds of questions I was asking and the kinds of responses I was getting, and I had a spreadsheet with columns and rows, all of that. But I still did not have a great way to share some of those insights that I was gaining. And so, as I started looking at the vendors, one of the parts that was appealing was first, maintain a steady cadence of these interviews, because my ability to interview, ebbed and flowed depending on how much workload I had. As I mentioned, we were pretty short-staffed at the time. And that's something that I did not want to get in the way of being able to get those customer insights. So that combination of wanting a continuous cadence of those customer and prospect interviews, along with being able to gather all of those insights in a way that would be transmissible to the entire company. Because my objective always has been that part of what product marketing does is it raises the basic IQ of the organization around customer and prospect areas, customer and prospect insights. And we've done that with marketing research that we do, and we've done that with win-loss analysis. And that's what kind of tipped the scale, which is we saw what we could do together with Clozd in terms of doing we started off with about 8 odd interviews per month, and we've increased that steadily over time. But then looking at the dashboard that Clozd had at the time, but then also what we've worked together with Clozd on building it too. It's definitely a lot more enhanced and a lot more full featured than what we used to have in the early days.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and we really appreciate that. I mean, your insights and suggestions have been really helpful as we continue to build out our capabilities as well. So that's great. That's super helpful. So I mean, you started doing this win-loss program. You started yourself, you were using Clozd, and then how has the win-loss program evolved at Avalara since then, based on, you know, what we've done, but also just how you've implemented the findings and expanded the scope of what the win-loss program means to the organization.
Yeah, so there's many levels to that question. So the one thing that really changed as we started to dive into the win-loss program is how we approached the targets for our interviews themselves. When we started off initially, the thinking was, you know, we would do about 60% lost and 40% won deals, because the hypothesis in my head was you learn more with lost interviews. And we started to tweak that ratio a little bit between won and lost deals. Then we felt like we had started to get a little bit of an understanding of what those insights were around the won and lost deals. But what we also discovered was we could actually do a lot more with the win-loss interview process. One of those was, for instance, I believe I want to say for 2 to 3 quarters, we focused on just competitive wins and losses. Okay? And we had 2 or 3 primary competitors, and we said, let's focus on just competitive wins and losses, because that is an area that win-loss can really help on. In fact, over those 2 to 3 quarters, we also decided to narrow down the focus to one key competitor that we really, really cared about, and we had a hard time getting information about. So all those were great ways of pivoting and iterating on the program. And in its latest iteration, as we were starting to analyze a lot of our internal data around wins and losses, what we discovered, and as you alluded to probably early on, is we found that an overwhelming majority of our losses were to status quo, meaning there were more than one competitors in a deal, and the prospect chose not to buy our products, but they also chose not to buy our competitors' products. So they decided to stay with status quo. So that was one area that was a challenge for our marketing team, because we wanted to make sure that we were able to message around that we were able to build our marketing materials around that. It was also challenging for our sales teams, because it's hard for sales teams to get more than a one-word answer or a curt email about why we lost the deal. Sometimes, you know, prospects, especially in a status quo kind of scenario, will just ghost you. You know, they just vanish on you. And so that's where we felt like win-loss interviews and what Clozd did for us was key and critical, and one of the best suited ways for win-loss interviewing. So that's what we've done over the last few years. And since I'd say we've tracked our status quo losses for about 4 quarters or so now. And now we are evolving the program again to focus on some other priority areas. Like the company, Avalara has been historically a very mid-market focused organization, but we are changing that. And we know that we are the market leader in the mid-market space. Now we want to go up market into the enterprise space and also into the smaller business areas. And what we are starting to do now is expand the scope of win-loss interviewing to some enterprise interviews. Okay, so try to understand where are we lacking, whether it is in terms of sales capabilities, marketing materials, in terms of product capabilities, what are the competencies and capabilities we need to develop in order to be relevant in the enterprise space. So that's where we are taking the win-loss program right now. So that's one way to think about how we evolve the win-loss program. The other way in which we are also evolving the win-loss program now is we are taking it international. So where we started off with about 8 odd interviews per month, I believe we are at close to 15 interviews, give or take a month, to where a majority of the interviews are still very US focused, because we are a very US dominated company as of now. But as we are moving international, we are also starting to conduct some interviews in the European region, where we are building new products, acquiring new companies, many new companies. So that's where we want to take it. And so I think if I had to boil it down, I think the key for me always has been that the win-loss program should reflect the strategic priorities that the company is going after, right? It is not a program that stands upon itself. It's not a program that just works in a vacuum. It needs to support and provides the scaffolding for all of the key strategic business initiatives that you have going on in the company, and really reflect those priorities in the way you are informing those priorities with this program.
Yeah, I like that, Sanjay. And yeah, it has been very interesting to see, over the time that we've been working together, that the program has evolved, and it's evolved to address some of these big strategic challenges and questions that you're trying to answer in the organization. So I'm curious to know, as a follow-up to that, I mean, how have you effectively worked cross-functionally and with others in the organization to one, make sure that the win-loss program is addressing those main strategic concerns, and then two, to take the insights developed from the win-loss program and actually affect the strategy or affect what you're doing in other parts of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the two key constituencies that are key and critical for product marketing, and I know every product marketer on this that's watching this will know this, is product management on the one side and sales on the other. Right? Those are the key constituencies that we deal with. And one of the things that we did very early on is we made access to the Clozd portal, along with all of the ongoing reports, available to all of the product managers and to all of the salespeople. And we wanted to do that because we wanted to make sure that we really democratize those insights. I mentioned before, I believe one of product marketing's role is to raise the organization's intelligence quotient around market intelligence, right? Because the more informed all of us are, and the more all of us have access to the same information, the more consistency and alignment there is around decision making. And so we did that early on. And then one of the other things that we did, and I think it's really important for any product marketer to do, is develop that level of confidence and alignment with sales teams. Because on the one hand, sales can largely benefit from win-loss analysis. And don't get me wrong, product management does, marketing does, product marketing does also benefit from win-loss analysis. But very frequently, since sales happens to be the final touch point with a prospect, there are times when sales teams can feel as if any negative connotation about the outcome of the deal reflects upon the sales teams. And so it is important that the sales team is aligned in terms of, what are the strategic goals that you're going after, what kinds of customers and prospects you're targeting, and then what kinds of questions are you asking those people. And that's something that we did early on. I think we can do a lot better. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we are by no means perfect, but I think there's that really helped kind of reduce the potential for defensibility among sales teams, right? And so that's one of the areas that I highly encourage product marketers to do, which is make sure that you're bringing the sales teams and the product management teams into confidence as you're building up your program.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, was that a challenge at first? Was it hard to get to get buy-in from the sales team? And if so, I mean, what did you overcome? What did you do to overcome that, or to facilitate that kind of buy-in?
I would not say that it was a huge challenge for us, because
Okay.
the good news is that the sales leadership that came on board at the time I joined, we were pretty firmly aligned on where we want to go with this program and many other initiatives. The challenge becomes, and this is a challenge that I'm sure other product marketers face too, that in a company that's growing as fast as we are, there are constantly new initiatives, new products, new geographies, new mergers and acquisitions. The challenge is that you're constantly adding more to your plate, and maintaining a steady eye on this program can be challenging. You see, keeping that level of attention on the kinds of things I talked about, which is, how do you keep an eye on strategic priorities? How do you make sure all stakeholders are coming along with you? Making sure that you are, for instance, we send out regular quarterly reports to all our stakeholders, to the leadership of the company, so they are aware of what are the kinds of things that we are exploring. That can become challenging when you're growing as fast as we do. And all teams, it's my team, product marketing, sales teams, product management teams, can tend to lose their eye on the ball. And it becomes incumbent on product marketing that owns this program to really make sure that we are keeping our eye on the ball, we are keeping the program fresh, and we are informing and educating the rest of the organization about the insights we are gathering from here.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I'm glad you articulated that. It's so important to keep it rolling, even though there's always competing priorities. And sometimes, you can forget, and then you don't realize that until it's too late that you're not getting these really valuable win-loss insights. So what other challenges did you find that you faced with the program, if any?
I think those are really the biggest ones. I think that's about it. I do want to kind of double down on the importance of keeping the program fresh, because what you can end up doing is, if you're asking the same set of questions and you're continuing to gather and report on similar sets of insights, people can lose interest. It can become like more of the same. And so you want to make sure that you are evolving the program with the strategic priorities of the business.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I liked, one of the things that you mentioned to that point is, when you were continuing to look at the program, you looked at competitive wins and losses, you started focusing on one competitor, and then you realized a lot of deals were being lost to not a particular competitor, but to the status quo, to not choosing anyone. So how did you tell me more about, how the insights you developed from the interviews where there was no competitor? Tell me about how that was helpful and how that benefited the organization.
Yeah, I think so. Clearly, win-loss analysis was not the only place where we were kind of exploring that question. It started off with really analyzing the data that we capture from our deals in our CRM system, Salesforce. And then we took it to win-loss analysis, and we've done a few other things along the way. I think the key to really making these insights actionable is, in my mind, was to really highlight the fact that what you're trying to do is optimizing the value exchange between Avalara and our customers, right? And that value exchange happens to be different for different segments, for different personas that you're targeting. And some of this may sound so obvious, right? But when you're talking to a really small customer, for them, accuracy is not as important, right? We deal in sales tax automation, right? Accuracy of those sales tax calculation is not as important as it is to a mid-size or a large customer. So when we are talking to them in terms of our marketing messages, in our sales conversations, we need to keep that in mind, which is really small businesses don't want to spend a single ounce of their energy in trying to configure the product and trying to spend time with the product, right? It is about they want to buy it and forget about it. You see, for mid-market customers and some of those types of personas, it is much more about what is their current way that they are managing their sales tax compliance, and providing them some type of a comparison between what their current way of performing sales tax compliance in and how does Avalara help. And to that effect, for instance, one of the things we did as we discovered that people were finding that they did not feel they would end up saving much money or gain anything else from implementing Avalara. So what we did as a result of that is we talked to our sales reps, and what sales reps shared with us is a lot of businesses don't end up capturing or thinking through all of the time that they end up spending with sales tax, right? They think about, let's say, filing a sales tax return at the end of the month as the time that they're spending, but they don't think about, let's say, researching tax rates or applying those tax rates, or taking care of the errors that they have made as, let's say their customers return any of the products or merchandise. They don't think about that as time that they're spending on sales tax. So what that allowed us to do is take those learnings from a combination of win-loss analysis, conversations with our sales reps, and build an ROI calculator. And that ROI calculator allowed us in a fairly structured way ask questions of our prospects. So we force them to recall every single minute that they're spending on sales tax compliance, but also the potential dollars that they are saving. And then last but not the least, the risk that you're able to mitigate because you're that much less susceptible or prone to, let's say, a sales tax audit of sorts. So some of the insights that we gained allowed us to kind of, gather more information, more input, and then apply it and then action it in the form of, let's say, an ROI calculator.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and I really like, Sanjay, what you said about, how you used multiple different sources of data to figure this out, right? It was mining data in the CRM. It was talking to the salespeople. It was doing the win-loss interviews. And I think those are all really important components of an effective win-loss exercise is, you're getting information from different channels. And then, you took that and made it actionable and actually affected the sales process as a result. So that's fantastic. So given that, and it sounds like you made this ROI calculator and that's been pretty effective since, but what advice would you give to other product marketers that are dealing with this same type of scenario where a lot of their losses are coming from the status quo? I mean, I think there's a lot to be inferred from your previous answer, but what else would you suggest to them?
Yeah, without kind of sharing any of the nitty-gritty details about our own business, which I don't think I would want to do, I would just urge product marketers to think about the things that everybody talks about no matter what, right? Which is you have to think about your value proposition to your specific buyer personas, right? Whether you think about it in terms of verticals or industries, or you think about it in terms of segments, small, mid-sized, large customers, you really have to think about what is that value exchange that you're offering to customers. And that value exchange has to be heavily weighted in favor of the value proposition you're offering, right? If you think about a teeter-totter of value proposition, the price that they're paying and the amount of effort that they put into your product must be outweighed by the value proposition for the product. And once you achieve that, and all of these other tools are helping you get there, right? You have to figure that out for your own business. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So I think that's a unique scenario. A lot of the time people are thinking about win-loss as a way to get competitive intelligence. And I think that's great, but it's broader than that. It's why do you win and lose business regardless of what your competitive set is or isn't. So that's fantastic. So Sanjay, I mean, we've talked about a few different things, kind of how you got started what some of the main takeaways and benefits were, what some of the challenges were, some of the things that were unique to Avalara. And you also talked about what we're doing now. So what do you think is next for the win-loss program? And you mentioned we're going to more enterprise deals. We're trying to think about how we can play in the more upmarket space. But what is next in your eyes for win-loss, and how you want to see this continue to evolve?
Yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 different areas that we see expanding this program into. One is, I mentioned enterprise deals. We absolutely have to do that. Mm-hmm. The second is, and I briefly mentioned this, we're starting to go international. So we are starting to interview our international customers. And of course, Clozd is helping us with that, which is great. The third area that we can do a lot better on is around renewals, right? Which is our existing customers who are for some reason or another jumping off the platform. How do we try to start to understand in a lot deeper way why they are not interested in our products anymore? Because we are a SaaS business, and that is an extremely important metric for us to first keep track of, right? Which is customer retention, but then also address any issues we may have with it. And then the final one, and I'd say this, is I believe the success of this program for us is going to hinge on a lot deeper engagement with sales teams and how we really get ourselves aligned. We are doing good, but we can do a lot better in aligning this program closely with the sales teams. And how do we make sure that as we, let's say, conduct the interviews over a quarter, how do we first off define some of those strategic priorities that we talked about together with the sales teams? So when we get out with the results at the end of the quarter, or whatever your time frame might be, we are able to take those insights and be able to present right back to the sales teams in ways that are going to be actionable for them, so they can benefit from it. And I think that is just going to be super important for us moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, like we talked about the collaboration with sales and other departments in the organization. I also like that you mentioned that, this goes beyond just new business win-loss, right? Churn and renewal analysis is a key part of win-loss. And when you're thinking about that, the questions are different, right? You want to understand about people's experience after they've been using a product for a while and what's working, what's not, things like that. So, yep. So that's great. So kind of, final question as we're wrapping up. A lot of this, I think, can be inferred from what we've already said, but what advice do you have for other companies and marketers that are thinking about win-loss? I mean, if they're trying to run their own program, if they're using a third party, or if they're just first considering the possibility of doing win-loss, what would you suggest to them, and what do you think you've learned as you've been doing this for a few years?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing is to get started. Mm-hmm. Get the damn program started, right? Start small, take baby steps. Yeah. And as you may have heard me describe our own experience with the program, we iterated, we learned, and then we iterated only after we started working with it. At no point are you going to be able to start off with your best idea, right? You have to start small, start with 5 interviews, right? Start with 3 interviews. But as you start seeing the results for your own business and for your own customers, you're going to start seeing some patterns, and that is going to allow you to go down the directions that this program may eventually lead you to. But you're not going to be able to strategize your way into it. You have to make the commitment to get started. The other implication from this is make sure that you're figuring out how you're going to have some part of a dedicated resource on this program, because if you just let the program run without any direction, without providing it with that strategic scaffolding, what may end up happening is that this program dies a natural death, because there is nobody evangelizing, nobody kind of watching out for how do you keep it fresh, how do you keep you work with your stakeholders around the organization to focus on the right set of things. The second thing I would say, the first one is start the program and you learn your way through it. The second one is make sure you get the buy-in from your key stakeholders, especially the sales teams. That is just so important. Because you want to get the buy-in, you want to make sure sales understands the importance of this, and they don't feel like this is something being done to either undermine the sales teams or stepping on their feet or whatever. That's so important. And I'm very fortunate at Avalara that we have a super mature sales leadership who do understand why this is so key and critical for us. And finally, at the risk of repeating this, keep it fresh. Mm-hmm. Let the program and the way you're conducting the program reflect the priorities of the business. Don't just let it go on autopilot, because the moment you do that, somebody's going to come and say, hey, you guys are telling us the same things over and over again. Maybe we should just shut down the program. And there goes one of the key leverage points that product marketing has to really hear from customers, to really hear from outside the company. And believe me, and I say this with all the passion, that nothing gives you more credibility. Nothing gives you more credibility as a product marketer than saying that we heard this from real customers. And nobody's ever going to refute that when you're advocating a point of view inside the company that is supported by customer feedback.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's all I have.
No, that's great. That's fantastic, Sanjay. And I'll just add, I think one of the things that's made Avalara's program so successful is Sanjay has been an advocate for the win-loss program, and it's been a true partnership, right? If you're going to use a third party, it really requires the cooperation of both ends. And Sanjay's been working with this and making sure it's satisfying all of those things that he just described, right? That you have engagement with the sales team, that we're keeping it fresh, and Sanjay's done an excellent job of that. So, well, those are all the questions that I had, Sanjay. So really appreciate your time. This is excellent. I think there's a lot that our listeners are going to be able to learn from this. So thank you so much. And best of luck as you continue the program. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Sounds great, Jonathan. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sanjay.